There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated. Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. Honorable members, the only item on today's order paper is questions addressed to ministers in Cluster 4, Economics. There are 4 supplementary questions on each question. Parties have given an indication of which questions their members wish to pose a supplementary question. An adequate notice was given to the parties for this purpose. This was done to facilitate the participation of members who are connecting to the sitting through the virtual platform. The members who will pose supplementary questions will be recognized by the presiding officer. In allocating opportunities for supplementary questions, the principle of fairness, amongst others, have been applied. If a member who is supposed to ask a supplementary question through the virtual platform is unable to do so, if a member who is supposed to ask a supplementary question through the virtual platform is unable to do so due to technical difficulties, the party whip on duty will be allowed to ask the question on behalf of their member. When all supplementary questions have been answered by the executive, we will proceed to the next question on the order paper. The first question has been asked by the Honorable A.H. Mtembu to the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies. The Honorable Minister.
Chairperson,
Yes, Honorable Member.
my apologies, Chairperson. I want to rise on a point of order. I see Honorable Zwane is in the house. Sanctions are very important to this house. We've made a particular sanction yesterday, and I would like to know what is the status of Honorable Zwane in this house.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Member, the matter and the sanctions supplied by the Speaker is being attended to by the Speaker in consultation with the Chief Whip of the Majority Party and the Honorable Member concerned. And that is how the matter will be dealt with. I am not in a position to impose sanctions on members. Unfortunately, you've put the question to the wrong person. Now I want to recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The provisional liquidation of the post office has the potential to affect ordinary South Africans who depend on SAPO services. If this becomes a final order by the court, 700 SMMEs that support SAPO as a service provider will be affected. 6.9 million beneficiaries who get their grant through this mechanism will also be affected. No less than 12,000 workers will also be affected. Therefore, the ministry has instructed both SAPO and the department to do everything possible to prevent SAPO from being liquidated and to safeguard the services it offers. In the main, the conditions attached to the location in response to the question of conditions attached. Those conditions attached to the allocation of 2.4 billion include the following: addressing legacy issues such as creditor payment and employee benefit deficit to facilitate the departure of SAPO staff. In this regard, consequence management will be taken against board and executive who are responsible for non-compliance. In other words, when the findings come to clarify how did you get here, launching the post office of tomorrow is another condition. Also implementing quarterly meetings between DCTT, that is the department, and National Treasury to track and communicate progress towards meeting the bailout requirements.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Mtembu.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Honorable Minister, considering that the SA Post Office SAPO has recently been placed under provisional liquidation by the High Court, how will this impact on ordinary South Africans making use of SAPO services? B, what conditions are attached to the 2.4 billion grant from the National Treasury to SAPO? Thank you once again, House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Member, Honorable Chair. I think the member maybe is wanting me to re-emphasize the response that when this happened, no less than 700 SMEs whose business will be affected, 6.9 million beneficiaries who get their grant will also be affected. A minimum of 12,000 workers stands to be affected. In the 2.4 billion conditions are about addressing legacy issues such as payment of creditors and also launching of the post office of tomorrow, implementing the quarterly meetings between the department and National Treasury to track and communicate the use of that money. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Honorable members, the second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable T. Botlani.
Thank you so much. Honorable Minister, SAPO continues to be mismanaged with branches closing on a daily basis while holding on to the dream of the Post Bank. In its wisdom, Treasury has provided another bailout to SAPO using taxpayers' fund. SAPO forecast a net loss of 2.3 billion for the 2022-23 financial year. What are the reasons for the minister to reappoint the board that oversaw the collapse of SAPO now to oversee the 2.4 billion bailout? Thank you, Minister.
The Honorable Minister.
We are in a process of appointing a new board. What is existing now is an appointment on interim measures until we appoint the new board. And of course, in doing so, for institutional memory and accountability, that's one of the considerations that made us to say in the interim, as we are working on appointing the new board, the existing board must assist us to clarify the underlying conditions that place us where we are now. Thank you, Honorable Member.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Thring. Is the
Chair,
Honorable Thring?
Chair Steve Swatcher, may I take it on his behalf?
You may proceed.
Thank you, House Chair. Rising from your response, Honourable Minister, the ACDP, like many others, is deeply concerned about the possibility of the South African Post Office facing the reality of the Post Office facing this financial crisis, which has resulted in it being placed under provisional liquidation. You correctly point out the implications that it would have on staff members, on access by the public, and clearly this needs to be avoided at all costs. Would the Honourable Minister indicate whether the provisional liquidation order, which is set to be heard again on the 1st of June, and given the fact that the creditor involved in bringing that application has been paid, will be opposed by SAPO? In fact, will the Post Office bring an application to have it removed from provisional liquidation, which will enable it to apply its turnaround strategy and avoid a fire sale of all the assets in terms of a liquidation sale? First, that's the first issue. Secondly, does the Honourable Minister
No, your
foresee—
time is now expired,
Thank you,
Honourable
Chair.
Member. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Swat. As I've said several times in dealing with that question in public, we are working on the best possible solution. And the primary purpose is to make sure that SAPO doesn't disappear. So the solution or the option we're going to take will be of such a nature that creditors remain comfortable with regard to the future of the institution. And in that approach, we may not, the issue of challenging the liquidation does not come across as an attractive option to us, other than finding the best possible way, which will be agreed between us and the creditors. That's where we are at the moment.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Kwankwa. I'm informed the honorable member is not available to take the question. Honorable members, we will thus proceed to the next question. Question number 213 has been asked by the Honorable Saripin to the Minister of Finance. The Honorable Minister of Finance.
Honorable House Chair, let me start by congratulating the member, Sarupin, of being elected number 4 in the DA.
blue envelopes.
The document the honorable member refers to was incorporated into the Economic Recovery and Reconstruction Plan, which was adopted by this House on Thursday, 15 October 2020. The ERRP sets out a range of immediate and short-term measures that will be taken to rebuild confidence, kickstart the economy, and continue to mitigate the effects of the pandemic. These measures are accompanied by a set of structural reforms that will enable faster, more inclusive growth and employment over the medium to long term. Many of these reforms are drawn from government's long-term structural reform agenda, as outlined in the economic transformation, inclusive growth, and competitiveness, a contribution towards a growth agenda for the South African economy. 2, progress of the implementation of the ERP is reported regularly publicly by the ministerial chairs of the economic sector, investment, employment, and infrastructure development cluster. The honorable member is advised to refer to this question and some of the aspects to those members. Thank you.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Saripin.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Minister, thank you for your congratulations. But since you now tell us that this document has been included in the Economic Recovery Plan, I want to just take you through some highlights from this document. It promised reforms in early childhood development, but there have been no reforms, and in KwaZulu-Natal, there are not even deliveries for school feeding schemes. The document promised incentives for youth employment creation and in apprenticeships. No reforms have happened to implement this. It promised reform in the energy sector and have the private sector take over failing ESCOM power plants. No reforms have been implemented to implement this. The document listed critical reforms to raise growth on its second last page, to raise investor confidence to lift growth by 0.5%. It promised to reduce barriers to entry to raise growth by 0.6%. It promised to reform transport to raise growth by 0.3%. And it promised 0.2% additional growth by prioritizing agriculture and tourism to reach annualized growth of 3.5% rather than the current baseline of 1.5%. Like every government policy document, it promises a lot, but delivered very little. Furthermore, this document has also been contradicted by various industry master plans produced by the DTI that moves trade policy in a very contradictory position to both this and the Economic Recovery Plan. So, Minister, would you care to explain to this House why none of these reforms have been implemented and why so many documents contradict each other in government compared to this document?
The Honorable Minister.
I suspect the honorable member is not following or reading government documents. No, no. Your duty is to listen now, I'm speaking. The honorable member is aware that there's a project run by the presidency and National Treasury called Operation Volunteer, whose main focus is to focus on the structural reforms referred to in that document. Amongst others is the one you have referred to now. Minister Mantashe is around to tell you what has happened on the energy sector, including some of the outcry by a number of people here and saying we must provide embedded generation. In fact, Minister Mantashe has done that on the energy fund and going beyond the limitations of 100 megawatts. So those are structural reforms. We're being structural reforms to change how ESCOM is about by creating a transmission company. And at the moment, there's going to be a bill presented in Parliament amending the Electricity Act in order to provide for a transmission company. Those are reforms that are referred in that document. At the moment, you must have seen that Transnet has issued a document for private participation in the rail and toll sector. So the entire logistic sector is being transformed to provide for private sector participation. That's why I'm saying maybe the honorable member has not been following some of the documents the government has advised you. We can send you a report on the OV. Thank you.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Mabiletsa.
Thank you. Minister, the sector master plans of the economic reconstruction and recovery plan are fundamental to ensuring progress and development of the targeted sector. Without requesting detail on the master plan, what is your frank and broad assessment of the state of the sector master plans, and have they had at this stage the intended policy impact as envisaged? If not, what are the reasons? Thank you.
The Honorable Minister.
My assessment of the broad master plans is that in a number of sectors, they're effective. And that they are not, contrary to what the honorable members said here, in contradicting with the RRP. No, that's not true. A number of sectors have made progress in clothing, in the automobile industry, in the global business sector, which in particular include call centers. And all of those things, master plans, in particular the call centers, people can talk about specific provinces, but they exist precisely because of the incentive package the government has placed around them. So the master plans broadly are working and in supporting the structural reform. Thank you.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Shivambu.
Chair, I'm the Shivambu today. Can I be?
Please proceed.
Can I be very protected, Chair?
Please proceed.
Yeah. On behalf of the Deputy President of EFF, we ask the Minister. Minister, we said as the economic freedom fighters that the document presented by the former Minister Tito Mboweni as National Treasurer Economic Policy document was a privatization pamphlet. The document makes bold proposals to privatize water, sanitation, and electricity. The pamphlets call for privatization of airports, manufacturing of armaments. We're not surprised because it was authored by the IMF and World Bank consultants, who are used to go all over the world to champion austerity budgets and privatization. Minister, will you agree that the document tabled as an economic strategy is in fact a manual of steps to follow if you want to privatize strategic functions of the state and destroying the capacity of the state for the sake of profit? Yes or no? Straight to the point, Chief.
The Honorable Minister.
What was the document about? What was the document about? The document was about microeconomic reforms. And microeconomic reforms are critical Professor Houseman has made an important point recently and said part of the focus of the South African debate and discourse on economy has been a discourse focusing on macro to the exclusion of microeconomic changes which are necessary. What are those macroeconomic changes that are?
Honorable Minister, I'm sorry to interrupt you. May I ask the members of the ANC just to quiet down because I can hardly hear what the minister says. Please proceed, Honorable Minister.
House Chair, some of these questions help us to talk proper economics, I'm saying the document was still coming on macro. The document was about microeconomic reforms. I was quoting Professor Houseman from Harvard. Said part of the difficulty with the South African discourse focus on the macro part, whereas our major challenges, whether it's electricity, whether it's logistics, and so on, are macroeconomic reforms that are necessary for growth in this economy. What that document was talking about was the microeconomic reforms and structural reforms that are necessary for growth in this economy. Obviously, when you write a document, you draw on experiences in other jurisdictions, no doubt about that. What that document was not a prescription for privatization, it was a prescription for structural reforms which are critical for growth in this economy. Thank you, on House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Buthelezi.
President, may I take the question?
You may.
Thank you, House Chairperson. No, is non Chairperson, some of South Africa's most pressing economic challenges today include load shedding, unemployment, and by extension, poverty and inequality. If the aim of this document produced in 2019 correlates with the value of investment in this country as espoused in the mission statement of the South African Investment Conference, which was held in its 5th session recently, aiming to position South Africa as a globally relevant player and partner in trade and investment that can compete with the best in the world. Are there therefore mechanisms in place designed to directly positively impact the investment pledges made at the conference, also addressing the economic transformation agenda? Thank you, Chair.
The Honorable Minister.
It's difficult to understand the question part of that. I could see the lecture about the investment conference, but let me attempt. The investment conference is but one, but the document is, and I've made the point. The document was about what kind of reforms that are necessary to effect that. The investment conference is but one aspect of the marketing for investment in the economy, not necessarily part of the structural reforms articulated in that document. That's a fundamental key members must understand. What kind of changes were being proposed that were microeconomic level? What are the changes that are necessary, whether it's rail, whether it's electricity, whether is on the skills front, and so on and so on. That's what the document is about. Investment is about promotion of the economy or promotion of investment, which will affect the gross fiscal capital formation. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Question number 235 has been asked by the Honorable Madokwe to the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson, honorable members. The quality of coal going to ESCOM is an operational matter. It requires management of ESCOM to actually verify what quality and what quantity of coal do they receive. It's not a departmental matter, it's an operational matter. But what I can assure you of is that in South Africa, there is no shortage of coal. No, there is a quality of coal that is inferior. That's why one of the issues I always ask to the Minister of Electricity, now it's nice now. No, it's nice now. You're, now,
Order, honorable members.
the question that I always ask is, why would ESCOM opt for trucking in coal instead of getting coal in the cost plus mines next to the power station, so that that coal can come to the power station on a conveyor belt? That debate has started and is serious, because if you are taking coal through a conveyor belt, the quality of coal is not going to be tampered with. It's more secured, it's more protected. Number two, it is important to always remember that coal mining is not a social activity. It's a business activity. If you run a coal mine, you are running a business, you will send coal to ESCOM, you will export other coal. So it's not a question of saying you stop export to fulfill ESCOM supply. There's no such a thing. You order sufficient coal for ESCOM, you allow the business to export the rest of the coal. Because they're running a business, they're making profits, in the process employ people, and that's what coal mining is all about. So, the question of ESCOM supply on the basis of contractual agreement between ESCOM, at our level, we have not received any problem raised by ESCOM of shortage of coal. I know, I can tell you, that's for information. A week ago, I opened a coal mine, which is extending the life of an open cast by 25 years. Yeah. The owner is Seriti, it's a black company. Seriti is a black company. Do I have interest? Everybody say I have interest everywhere. I wish I had. I didn't have. But we opened that mine so that the quality of coal continues to improve, and those businesses must make and do business with whoever they can make business.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Madokwe.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. Minister, I think you missed the question. The question is not about the quantity of coal, but the quality of the coal. And this is coming from the fact that ESCOM has been saying some of the service providers have been giving them low quality coal, which has affected even the functioning of the power stations, and has to some extent even affected and made them worse. So the question is that as a department that is responsible and has different entities like your CGS, your MINTEC, and even your AMFSC, which would assist in making sure that the quality of coal is proper, what is it that you have done as the department to make sure that you assist ESCOM in addressing and assessing and making sure that the coal that is used is of proper standard before it even makes it to the power stations, considering the fact that these power stations are very important as well in making sure that we stabilize load shedding? Thank you very much.
The Honorable Minister.
Honorable Madogo didn't listen to the answer. Let me repeat it. Now let me repeat it. Now let me repeat the answer. I said, one of the discussions we're having with Minister Ram Hooper is, why should we opt for trucking in coal to ESCOM rather than taking it from cost plus mines on a conveyor belt? And that talks to the quality of coal, because when you truck coal in, the risk of tampering with the quality is higher. But if you are getting it on a conveyor belt from the nearby mine, that quality would be more secured and it would be protected. That is the answer I'm giving you. And as a department, we can't take that decision for ESCOM. We can raise it as an issue.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Wolmarans. Order, honorable members.
Honorable Minister, while ESCOM's power stations use middling coals rather than high-quality low ash coal to run its power stations, what is the department doing to attract large investments in new and expansion of old coal mines such as Siritis, Klipspruit Colliery, and Canyon Coast Guguletu Colliery? And how will such large investments minimize the uncertainty around the adequate supply of coal to ESCOM's power stations and the impact that this uncertainty may have on energy security in the country?
The Honorable Minister.
Coal mines, very vibrant business. Turnover in 2021 was 130 billion rand. That was the turnover of coal mining. It's quite a good industry. Contractual arrangement between ESCOM and the coal mine is not actually facilitated by a department. It's contractual agreement between ESCOM and business people called coal miners. And they supply the quality of coal. That's why I say the quality of coal is a function of operations. And therefore it is ESCOM management that is a responsibility and a duty to ensure that they receive coal of the quality they require. It can't be a departmental responsibility. What?
Order, honorable members.
There you are. Now,
Honorable members, please don't interrupt the minister.
the problem with people who never ran a stock shop is that they always intervene. They never ran a stock shop. Now, when you try to simplify complex operations, they won't understand. They've never ran a stock shop. All I'm saying, ESCOM has a management that should ensure that the quality of coal they get and the quantity of coal they get is what they have agreed on contractually with the coal miner. That's it. It's not a departmental matter.
Thank you. The order, honorable members. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Swart.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, arising from the minister's response, we know that ESCOM
Order,
is
honorable
not,
members.
we know
Please
that
proceed,
ESCOM is
Honorable
not,
Swart.
we know ESCOM is not short of coal and receives the coal it requires. And the ACDP agrees with the minister with the conveyor belt, and we look forward to the new Largo mine delivering coal to Kusile. That possibly will resolve a lot of issues. But the problem, Minister, and where the government can come in lies with criminal syndicates, the so-called coal mafia operating, which is partially behind the poor performance of ESCOM power plants. These coal syndicates supply poor coal to ESCOM, even contaminated with metal and rubble and subgrade quality. And we see this. So, Honorable Minister, the question is, what is government doing to stop these criminal syndicates and close these illicit coal stockyards and dump sites, which are in effect resulting in the quality of coal that is required by ESCOM being stolen and being removed elsewhere, resulting in the poor quality of coal being supplied to ESCOM? But we agree with you on the conveyor belt, and we look forward to seeing those conveyor belts implemented at all power stations. Thank you.
The Honorable Minister.
At least half the question has been answered by the honorable member. In that conveyor belts linking coal mines to a power station is the safest way of supplying coal. If ESCOM prefers trucking in of coal, actually they are facilitating the work of syndicates. That's what I'm saying. Because you truck in coal, it is tampered with on the way between the source and the power station. And you can't say, what does government do on that? suggestion we're making to ESCOM will emphasize it. Prefer conveyor belt from a mine to a power station. That will work, whether it is Ego in Kusile or Kutala in Kendal or Mata at Mata or Krill at Krill. If you do that, you secure the quality of coal, but if you track it in, syndicates will intercept trucks and contaminate the coal. And that is how it is. So it's not a government facilitating syndicate. It is syndicates intercepting trucks that truck coal into ESCOM power station, which is not a normal operating of a coal mine and a power station.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Milam.
Thank you, House Chairperson. I might not have run a tax shop, Minister, which you appear to know a lot about, but I have run several successful businesses. Minister, there is a lot of noise, both in this House, in discussions around the dinner table and the Shisanyama and on social media about how we're exporting coal we desperately need to run our power plants. This is a complete red herring. The real issue is that South Africa's preferential procurement policies are excluding coal producers who may wish to supply to ESCOM. Any attempt to reserve such coal production presupposes that ESCOM has a need for it, which, as you have pointed out, is just not true. But I really want to address the second part of the initial question. Minister, will you kindly inform the members of this House that the coal power plants which are being decommissioned or are planned to be decommissioned are in fact being shut down, not because we lack coal, but rather because they have reached the end of their usable lifespan, that there is no rush to decommission, but it is instead planned end of life that has been on the cards and included in our energy planning for many years. Thank you.
The Honorable Minister.
I think we should appreciate the fact that commissioning and decommissioning of power station is not within my scope. If I had the scope, I wouldn't have decommissioned Komati, because Komati was giving us electricity at 70% electricity availability factor, but it was decommissioned. Today, by whomsoever, today we have a solar plant in Komati. That solar plant, instead of 1,300 megawatts that Komati provided, gave us 200 megawatts. Therefore, that decision to decommission Komati, I submit, it's a wrong decision. I submit. These power stations that say must be closed, I think, let me not get into that, leave it to the minister. I said to him, he will take all the hot potatoes because I don't know if you remember that at a point, there were 3 power stations that were mothballed. Those 3 power stations are today operating, they are performing above average. That is Camden, that is Grootvlei, and it was Komati. All of them are performing above average. So if the power station has come to an end, it can be decommissioned. But if the life can be extended, it should be extended, because the crisis we're having is availability of electricity today.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, question 193 has been asked by the Honorable Mabiletsa to the Honorable Minister of Finance. The Honorable Minister.
The answer to the question is yes. The National Treasury has engaged with NESA as required in terms of the law. Electricity tariffs are regulated in terms of the Municipal Finance Management Act and the Electricity Regulation Act. The Electricity Regulation Act empowers NERSA to determine the electricity tariffs to be charged by municipalities and ESCOM. However, in terms of section 4.2 subsection 1 of the MFA, ESCOM is required to submit proposals to amend the municipal tariffs charged for electricity to the Minister of Public Enterprise, the Executive Authority, and NERSA, the regulatory agency, for approval. But before such submission of the proposed amendment to its pricing structure to the Minister of Public Enterprise and NERSA, ESCOM must request National Treasury and organized local government, SALGA, to provide written comments on the proposed amendment 14 days in advance, and these comments must be included in the application is submitted to the executive authority and regulator. It should also be noted that after National Treasury and SALGA have provided their written comments, ESCOM is still required to submit the proposed amendments to the pricing or to the pricing structure to NERSA for approval in terms of section 4.2 subsection 1B of the MFA. This is the last time National Treasury is engaged in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Mabiletsa.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, the ESCOM application to NERSA was in fact substantially more than the 15.1% agreed for municipal tariffs. Given government's commitment to tackling the cost of living and knowing the economic hardship and knock-on effects to inflation that this will have, why is it that the National Treasury has not been successful in convincing ESCOM through its written comments and in its engagement with NERSA, given that administrative pricing has an extremely negative impact on the rate of inflation, or does the Minister and National Treasury agree with the tariff? If so, why?
Honorable Minister.
Let me start with the yes. We agree with the tariff. Because what the tariff attempts to do is to give ESCOM a cost-reflective tariff. That's what it attempts to do, a cost-reflective tariff. Why would I be passionate in supporting that in this current environment? It's precisely because we are taking a quantum leap of dealing with the ESCOM debt. It's quite important that in doing so, ESCOM moving forward becomes viable. I know it's cost implications on the economy, but at the same time, there's a need. We've got to balance between the cost to the economy and the survival of the institution. So I'm answering this question broadly in those terms and say, indeed, we do agree. National Treasury and including its political head agree with the changes. It does not mean there's common consensus amongst everybody. The position I occupy suggests that I take a particular view precisely because of the fiscal sustainability I need to protect. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The next supplementary question is to be taken by the Honorable Kwankwa, but is not on the platform. So I will give the opportunity now to the Honorable Heron to ask his supplementary question.
Thank you, House Chair, and thank you, Minister. Minister, we also have to be concerned about the consumer. And when NERSA approved Eskom's increase in February 2023, it moved the tariff to 173 cents per kilowatt hour. But in nearly every municipality across the country, consumers, including in indigent households, are already paying far more than that, if not double that. And municipalities are relying on surpluses from electricity sales to fund their operations. The City of Cape Town's budget for the coming financial year includes 34% of their revenue will come from electricity sales, with a 2 billion rand surplus. The City of Johannesburg is also budgeted for a 2 billion rand net surplus from electricity sales. So surely the focus, Minister, should shift for Treasury to the sustainability to the consumer by looking at the funding model for local government. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
There's no doubt going to be a challenge about the funding model for municipalities. The key question really moving forward, are municipalities going to rely on electricity as a service, as a source of revenue? That's going to be the challenge. Are municipalities going to rely on electricity as a source of revenue? That model is under threat as things stand. That model is under threat. So there need to be a separate discussion about the future sustainability of municipalities and what are the appropriate sources of revenue. That's a separate discussion we need to be indulged. Insofar as indigent, Treasury has made a worst scenario in projecting and supplying the local government. We made the worst scenario that the probability is that it's going to be 20.7. We didn't anticipate it's going to 15%. That assumption made us to provide an additional 1.1 billion rand to support the indigent municipalities. So in that sense, we've cushioned the impact on the poor in municipalities. Save the fact that in the poor sometimes are not paying, and I don't know what the municipalities are using with that indigent fund. But in principle, we anticipated a 20-point-something%, and we provided in 1.1 billion to in addition to what we're currently providing in municipalities. The entire total indigent package is 70 billion per annum.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Minister, from what I understand you are saying, because of the situation that ESCOM finds itself, heavy debt, maladministration, corruption, looting, it means that ordinary consumers have to pay the price for it. So NERSA takes into consideration the prices that is at ESCOM, and based on that, it's giving an increase for the inconsistent supply of electricity by ESCOM to the consumers. What is National Treasury doing to intervene in this matter? Or are you powerless based on the fact that NERSA is a separate entity and you don't have any power to address this with it? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Let me start with the last question and say, yes, I'm powerless. I've got no authority, and an independent institution like that should retain its independence, and that independence should be jealously guarded, because tomorrow it should not be a subject to manipulation by anybody. That's the first point. The second point, the battle between ESCOM and NERSA has always, those battles have even gone to court, because NERSA has always said, we're not going to fund you for your own inefficiency. So the tariff they take into account what are the inefficiencies in ESCOM, and therefore give a tariff which is court reflective, but does not compensate ESCOM for its inefficiencies. So it is inaccurate to come to that conclusion that NERSA does provide for ESCOM. That's the reason why sometimes they go to court with ESCOM, is around that debate between those two institutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, question number 206 has been asked by the Honourable Tebekulu to the Honourable Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development.
Ngiyabonga Sicalo wendlu. Ngibonge nakuhlonishwa uNdabezithu Cebekhulu mayelana nohlelo lokwabiwa komhlaba, ikakhulukazi beneficiary selection and allocation policy. Yinye kuphela liplazi kumbe linye kuphela liplazi lesikwazi kulisiza mayelana nokukhishwa ngendluzula emhlabeni. Kodwa mangisho ke mhlonishwa ngoba ngiyazi ukuthi wena uzolandela ukubuza umbuzo ukuthi amanye amaplazi anikezwe uhulumeni abe nenkinga yokuthi bathathe lo mhlaba ngendluzula la inkantolo isinqume khona ayisithupha. Kodwa amanye ke asasezinkantolo angu-25 wonke uma singawabala nje. Ngiyabonga.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Singh on behalf of the Honorable Kebekulu.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman. Ngiyabonga, Mhlonishwa. Mhlonishwa, it is common cause that because of the slow pace of land reform and restitution programs, people are restoring to land grabs, not only on state-owned land, but also on private property. Yes, eviction is an option, Papo, the minister will answer, where all else has failed. But with large tracts of state land available, it is better to settle persons who require land on a sustainable basis, whether for housing or agricultural purposes. Just 2 weeks ago, Joneshwar, a large tracts of land that was earmarked for an automotive supplier park, special economic zone near Winkelspruit in KZN, was invaded by land grabbers who then allotted plots to themselves, saying they are tired of wanting to be given land where they can build homes. The land is privately owned by the Dubai Trade Port Corporation. Now, it would seem, Honorable Chair, that impatience seems to be mounting between residents and job seekers, although many of the invaders are said to have arrived in expensive cars from outside of the area. My question, Honorable Minister, is this: what interventions or proactive steps can your department take to allay the fears of landowners vis-a-vis the aspirations of communities such as those in Winkelspruit?
The Honorable Minister.
Mangizibongele kakhulu mphathisifalo kanye nakuwe lunga elihloniphekile babusingi. Ngingasho nje ukuthi kulambela umhlaba yinto lekhona njoba satike ukuthi ngembili laba lebesiphethe abatange bakwadi ukuthi sibe nomhlaba lowanele empeleni bathethathela ngendluzula bona kuqala. Hulumende ke kaKhongolose kusukela ngo-1994 wakhuluma wabonisana nabebehlangene nabo etinkulumeni dokukhulumela lokwakha umthetho sisekelo ukuthi lo hlelo lokubuyisa kwemhlaba litokwenziwa njani. Lusaqhubeka njengoba sathi njengomana nakuwadi. Angithi ke konje akusiko ukuthi bantu bonke labatithathela umhlaba ngendluzula ngilabo bantu labaxakekile kumbe labalambele emhlaba. Uyasho ke nawe ukuthi njoba sibonile nje eDubai Trade Port bantu lebefika ngetimova letinhle letibita ungasho ukuthi labo bantu balambele emhlaba nani? Into lekhona nje ngokuthi bantu labanye bayaganga labanye bakwenda kube umshikashika wepolitiki kube sengathi kukhona labafuna ukukwenda kanti bafuna ukuthi ithathela bona nje. Lokubalekile ukuthi umthetho mawende umsebenzi wawo. Kwesibili bantu labanemhlaba mabawubiyele. Sike sithole ukuthi kwesinye isikhathi labanye labanamaplaza umuntu mase afuna ukulithengisa ikakhulukazi lawo maplaza asedudane kwebantu njengasemalokishini ayeke kube khona abantu labahlala kona abeseta kuhulumende athi buka ke hulumende nyala ngisakwati ukukhipha le bantu mina nje inkosi yami ngifuna ukubahlukumeda ngibhazale le mali engamabomu nje ebuka vele ukuthi labantu bawuthatha umhlaba khona. Ngiyabonga. Nango-ke lo munye esedudane kwakho.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The next supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Chwete. Order, honorable members.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. What could be the consequences for those found in the wrong by the law for committing such acts of inland invasions, Minister?
Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. We are a law-abiding society, and as a country, we've got enough legislation that we need to abide to. And I think it's important that those who are found on the wrong, the law must take its course. In the 25 cases I've just mentioned, 6 of them, court orders have been given, and we've evicted those people who illegally took land, which have done so in a wrong way. And I think that must be the norm, because one of the problems of land invasion is that it impacts government's planning. And some of the people put their structures on infrastructure such as sewer or water, and then people will then go and toy on the street and say, we don't have enough water, whereas illegality is actually part of the cause. And I think as South Africans, no matter how challenged we are about land need, but I think it is important that we abide by our legal framework that we have said there. It might be good tomorrow, Honorable Slengiwe, to say, yes, we will take land. What will you do when you're in government? And when people do that, will you up? No, you won't. I think it is important.
Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. Honorable Minister, will you address the chairperson, please?
Chairperson, I think what is important is that when we're on the other side and we're in opposition, we must never have an illusion that if we do wrong things, when we take over, supposedly when we do, and that's why I say when, think that things will happen because now we want to implement the law and now we're in power. I think the legal framework of this country must be respected by everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The next follow-up question will be asked by the Honorable Masipa.
Thank you, House Chair. Minister, land invasions across the country have had a devastating impact on the economy. South Africans have felt the negative impact of the land invasion and the lost economic opportunities. It has been widely reported that land invasions are spearheaded by organized crime syndicates who take advantage of vulnerable community members and encourage them to illegally occupy the land. At what point is the minister going to act against the organized crime syndicates who drive this land invasions? And two, the department's continued failure to provide security of tenure to communal communities to stop them from being manipulated by this politically organized crime syndicates. Thank you.
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. I think the question you are asking cannot be answered by the Minister of Agriculture alone, because the issues of crime, as you indicate, are matters that are dealt with by the police, as well as the security cluster. So we have been working with the police to really address some of those problems, either land invasions or even farm attacks where those happen, or rural communities who have been under attack. Because I think it's important as South Africans, as I said earlier, to be able to address challenges wherever they occur. And I agree with you that it's important that we need to deal with land invasions, because in some instances is organized by syndicates, but also some use it, as political tool to garner votes by mobilizing society in a wrong way. And I think we must call it for what it is, because the reality is you cannot mobilize society through lies when you know very well you cannot do that. Secondly, do what is illegal when you know that you can afford a lawyer and ordinary citizens may not. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Matiase.
Thanks, House Chair. I will be taking it for the Honorable Matthias. Minister, your most recent report to Land Claims Court indicates a very worrying confusion between the Commission for the Resurrection of Land Rights in terms of who holds the ultimate responsibility for briefing the lawyers to defend the rights of our people whose tenure to and is threatened by the white farmers in particular. We have seen a surge of cases in which long-term residents are evicted by these white racist farmers, especially in Stellenbosch. They've spent their entire lives on these farms and are evicted. What steps have you taken to resolve this confusion? And further, what steps are you taking to protect the rights of the farm workers and the farm dwellers who are being evicted on a daily basis by these white races here in Stellenbosch? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. Firstly, this is a new question, as you know. It doesn't flow. No. If you read the question relates to eviction on land that has been allocated through the beneficiary selection policy. So I just want to state the fact which you know, and you are smiling. So that question is a new one. But with respect to the assistance that government is giving in support of farm workers or labor tenants that are illegally evicted, we've provided legal services to those that are under threat of eviction or even evicted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Members, question number 205 has been asked by the Honorable Boshoff to the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members. The department does collaborate with the Department of Higher Education, Science and Technology. We work with them. And 2, we're working with trade and industry and competition. 3, we're working with the presidents. And together with other stakeholders, we're developing the green hydrogen sector in South Africa. It is more than just the corridor. You will see that there is a serious research project happening in Bukubai. There's another accelerated project in Sultana Bay. There's another one, which is the hydrogen trucks powered by hydrogen in Mukhalakwen. All those are coordinated and we're working together with all these departments. Working with the Department of Higher Education, Science and Innovation is necessary because this new sector requires a lot of research and innovation.
I now recognize the Honorable Boshoff.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Minister. I must say that while I was watching you, I also watched the Minister of Electricity with my left eye, and I see he still has an easy smile, so I don't think he's in his job very long at the moment. But what I would like to know is what impact do you expect from the hydrogen development, both on the coal market and the fluid fuel, diesel market? Do you have any projections or any expectations on the impact of this hydrogen development on those markets?
Honorable Minister.
We can't project that because, for example, if you take, for example, one aspect, the hydrogen power truck, it's already working in Mukhalakwen. And we are intending to increase that, work with Anglo, to 40 trucks. So the other projects are underway. It started with Bukubai, which was driven by the minister in the presidency at the time. It is today moving faster in Sultana Bay than Bukubai. So we're hoping that both those experiments will succeed and they have an outlet in Sasolburg. So it's an ongoing, well, it is not a date of starting or not. It's continuing research and it will grow as we research.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Malinga.
Thank you, House Chair. Honorable Minister, given that South Africa has a comparative advantages in platinum group metals, which are key in components for green hydrogen production, what role is the department expected to play within the hydrogen economy? And what mechanisms does the department have in place to boost investor confidence that South Africa is a destination for investment in hydrogen economy, given the increasing demand for hydrogen fuel cells storage aimed at providing renewable energy storage to the ESCOM grid? Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister.
Investor confidence is the key word. It's a function of the work being done. If we accelerate the investment as South Africans first, will attract other investors into the space. That's why when I talk about the hydrogen powered truck, I refer to Anglo their keenness to invest is encouraging the rest of other investors to come in. It is important to remember that Namibia next door is also investing in hydrogen. And unfortunately, they are exporting all their hydrogen capacity. We have to actually supplement that work by accelerating our research as South Africa.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Milam.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Minister, the Hydrogen Society Roadmap is intended to facilitate the integration of hydrogen-related technologies in various ways, in various sectors of the South African economy, and thereby stimulate economic recovery in line with the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. Now, given our broader electricity, societal, and economic challenges in South Africa, what specific steps is your government taking to incentivize private investment in the development of a robust hydrogen infrastructure?
The Honorable Minister.
What is nice about the question by Honorable Milam is that he directs it to the government broadly. So that means any minister here can respond to that question. Any minister here can respond to that question. But what is important, Honorable Milam, is that sometimes the state is always pointed to do things that it should facilitate. The government must facilitate investment. That's why if you talk of the hydrogen roadmap, it's a combination of various investors coming together, and there's many, including the pipeline that moves from Limpopo to Johannesburg to eThekwini. It will not be the government that invests in that. Government will facilitate that process. Various investors are going to invest.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Siti Msimang.
Chairperson, since the Prof has a problem of network, I'll take it. Honorable Minister, the Minister of Education, Science and Innovation recently stated that the government is actively working to increase the supply of trained people with skills necessary to implement, operating, and maintain the hydrogen economy. Considering this, I would like to know what measures your department will put in place to ensure that youth living in communities surrounding hydrogen mines will form part of the people that will be upskilled as mentioned by the Minister of Higher Education. I thank you.
One of the issues that needs an open debate in South Africa is the definition of the word local. Because sometimes people interpret narrowly that if you say people around hydrogen projects, it means people right around them. I interpret local as South Africa. And every South African who must begin, tofuna uziphendula kanti ubuze umbuzo. Awubuze umbuzo ndiyeke ndikuphendule. Ingxaki into ubuze umbuzo ufuna uziphendula. Now into ebalulekileyo kukuba xa kutreyinwa abantu kufuna batreyinwe baninzi bangalimithwa just on areas around the projects. In other words, you can't just train people from the Northern Cape because the project is in Bukubai. Or you only train people in the Western Cape because it is in Sultana. You must train people anywhere who have that skill, because one of the important things about skills is mobility. So if you are trained and you are skilled, it doesn't matter where you are in South Africa, you can move from one point to the next because skills give you mobility. So our facilitation is to encourage people to take that development opportunity from wherever they come from in South Africa, irrespective of the color of their skin.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, we will now proceed to question 194 that has been asked by the Honorable Malinga to the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy. The Honorable Minister.
Let's start off by correcting the concept of a war room. We don't have a war room there. We've put together a coordinating structure that pulls together 3 companies, which is the Petro SA, SFF, and IGAS. All of them want to be consolidated into the National Petroleum Company of South Africa. That's what we're doing. That work is continuing to ensure that we are producing, we're creating a new company. Petro SA, which is the main question, is stabilizing, is doing well on the side of trade. Actually, they have registered a profit after a long time on the trade side. But on the refinery side, we have only issued bids for people who will partner with the department to actually open the refinery itself. That process is at the tail end. We're assessing the application. We've received sufficient applications. And in those applicants, there are many competent people who can partner with the state in developing the revival of the refinery. So we're busy with that. That is where we are.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I now recognize the Honorable Malinga, who will take the first supplementary question.
Thank you, House Chair. The National Chair is throwing me under the bus. Since most of the refineries in the country are currently not producing, further exposing the country to the security of energy supply risk, how will Petro SA develop equitable feedstock options for the GTL refinery as soon as it is operational? And how is the coordinating structure have any strategy to ensure that Petro SA secures a long-term feedstock solution? Coordinating structure, that is WARU.
The Honorable Minister.
That is a function of a conference. Leave it. Now, the reality of the matter is that Petro SA is a refiner. It has the refining capacity. Private refineries, many of them are closed down. Whether it is engine, it is Sapref in Durban, they're beginning to close because it is more attractive to import finished products than to refine. But that poses a risk in the country, in the sense that it makes the country dependent on refined petroleum from outside. So it is quite urgent for us to finish the question of the refinery in Petro SA, because that refining capacity is necessary for the state. It's not sufficient. We need more refineries if we want to satisfy the needs of the country and reduce the risk.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Milam.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Minister, Petro SA is planning to reinstate full production at its Mossel Bay production assets, which include the FA platform and the gas to liquid refinery, following a total suspension of production in 2020 owing to feedstock shortages. Now, I note that you didn't answer Honorable Malinga's initial question, so I would welcome an answer here to that as well, which was, when will that return to production? But my question is this: what steps is the South African government taking to ensure that that refurbished gas to liquid refinery will operate sustainably and profitably in the long term, given the challenges that the company has had in the past, specifically related to feedstock supply? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Let me refine the answer because I've already given. In the sense that I've said, I'm mentioning it again. We've sent out the tender for bids to partner with Petro SA because it was quite clear that Petro SA needed more financial resources and technical capacity to be able to return the refinery into production. That is what we're working to, and we're hoping that we'll complete that within the next 18 months. Within the next 18 months, we must complete that process, then begin working on returning Petro SA plants, 3 plants in Petro SA, want to return all of them to production, but that process is going to take step by step, and we need a partner for that. Once we get that partner, we'll go on. And that process, that's the tail end of identifying the partner. So when will it return to production? That is a function of the process I'm outlining. So Petro SA is going to return to production. Actually, in talking to the team in Petro SA, we have emphasized that, listen, the fact that you are beginning to be profitable in the trade side doesn't give you an excuse not to invest time and energy on returning the plants into production. So we're emphasizing that part. We must return those plants to production because if that happens, South Africa will be better.
The next supplementary question is to be asked by the Honorable Madokwe.
Thank you, House Chairperson. One of the reasons why Petro SA is where it is today is due to the failed Ikwezi project, where the entity lost almost 14 billion rands. However, whenever the question about the status of Petro SA arises, you're often given an impression that your department tweaking legislation and mainly depending on exports will somehow magically change the issue of the country's petroleum supply and that of Petro SA. What discussions have taken place, particularly by this coordinating structure, regarding holding responsible the individuals who were responsible for the failed Ikwezi project, financially liable, and what the state stands to benefit from depending on external help rather than equipping and capacitating Petro SA?
The Honorable Minister.
The external support is directed at equipping Petro SA to be self-sufficient. Otherwise, the alternative would be to say the fiscus must pop out that money. And we say, yes, the fiscus will help, Petro SA will participate, but we need a partner because we need huge resources for Petro SA to be returned. Now, the project we are referring to, say it is because of the failure of that project. Let's accept that. Actually, when I describe Petro SA, I always say that is an example of asset stripping. That's how I describe it. Because you have Petro SA, which used to generate profit, which had a reserve of 27 billion rand, which had 2 drill rigs. Those drill rigs are not there. And therefore, Petro SA is not that a failure of a project, but there was quite deep stripping of the assets of an asset of the state. And what we are doing, we say, let's rebuild that project, that institution, because it is a healthy project and many people have come to offer us, many of us wanting to buy it. And we said, no, we can't sell it because people who stripped it want to come back and buy it and make more money. We must restore it as a state asset. And that is the commitment we've made. We continue to have that. So we are not dependent on external support. What? What's the follow-up question? Okay. Now.
Honorable Minister, your time is now expired.
Okay, thank you.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Minister, you rightfully agreed and alluded to the fact that it is a risk, particularly when refineries are shut down. And of course, we are importing fuel. Now, we have capacity constraints in terms of berthing, particularly at the Durban Harbour and other areas, including but not limited to the limited storage facilities. Do you not believe that this poses a serious risk unless we address the berthing challenges that we face in Durban port particularly, that we might run out of fuel at some stage? Or what measures are you putting in place to try and circumvent or prevent that?
The Honorable Minister.
The Durban port has been quite central in terms of petrol facilitation, export and import. But with the blowing up of the engine refinery, that capacity is out of it. And we have converted that into a storage facility, not sufficient. SAPREF, which Central Energy Fund was in the center of discussing reviving it and be part of it. Then there were floods that destroyed it. Therefore, restoring it back to production capacity will be quite costly, but the discussions are continuing. And our view is that storage capacity is important, it's necessary, but in South Africa today, the biggest outcry is on the reduction of the refining capacity. We're working on that. That's why when we had the state visit to Saudi Arabia, one of the discussions was on working with Saudi Aramco to build a refinery, which was promised for Richards Bay a few years ago. We're reviving those discussions because if we improve refining capacity, we're resolving the risk, and at the same time, we're reducing the need for more storage capacity for import.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, question number 225 has been asked by the Honorable Kadu to the Minister of Employment and Labour. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Well, it's important to highlight that Section 15A, subsection 2 of the Employment Equity Act, which is Act number 4 of 2022, which is the EEA Amendment Act, requires that the minister may, and my emphasis, after consulting the relevant sectors with the advice of the Commission for Employment Equity, and for the purposes of ensuring equitable representation of suitable qualified people from the designated groups at all occupational levels in the workforce, then can set numerical targets for any national economic sector identified. Of importance to note is that the designated groups as defined by the EEA are Black, that is African, colored, and Indian, women of all races. Emphasize that, women of all races, and people with disabilities, irrespective of their race and gender. Therefore, the methodology and the criteria that will be taken into account in the regulation of the sector in terms of EA numerical targets will not be limited to race only, but the intersection of race and gender across occupational levels in the workforce to ensure equitable representation of all population groups and gender in accordance with the demographics of the national and the regional economically active population as published by Statistics South Africa in the quarterly labor force surveys. So in addition, other relevant factors to be taken into account will include, but not limited to, the latest EEA status of the sector as reported by the designated groups, trends in the workforce movements in terms of recruitment, promotional and skills development opportunities, including where applicable, the termination rates, economic circumstances, and other dynamics of each sector as expressed by the relevant sector stakeholders during the consultation process. And noteworthy is that the sector stakeholders' engagements have now been concluded with economic sectors and proposed sector EE numerical targets. They will soon be published in the Government Gazette of public comment for 30 days as required by the Act. And therefore, Chairperson, in order to give effect to the main objective of the regulations of the sector numerical targets, which is to ensure equitable representation of all the designated groups across the occupational level. Section 42, read with Section 15 of the EA, require that any person, including employers and employees, that assess compliance with Chapter 3 of the EA must take into account the factors which have been listed, and we've mentioned all those factors. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Kadu.
Minister, let's be honest. The Employment Equity Amendment Act is simply a reinscribed form of job reservation, and the numerical targets which you now have the power to set across national economic sectors are quotas in all but name. This law is a pernicious piece of social engineering, gives you powers incompatible with a free market economy, and it will deter investors, strangle growth, and kill jobs. My question to you is this: how will the Amendment Act target and benefit the vast majority of poor Black people who are unemployed, not just a small elite? And how does it serve to promote equality in compliance with the Constitutional Court's test for redress measures?
The Honorable Minister.
Maybe to answer you, a rhetorical question is, how will leaving the status quo benefit the majority of the Blacks who have never been able to benefit from what we see today? Part of the problem, your question is informed by what I would call, it's against affirmative action, which has been there in other countries to deal with the history, those who have been disadvantaged by the past. In South Africa, it's a fact that the majority have been disadvantaged. Therefore, your question tends to be anti-transformation and anti-equity. And we are very clear that on this one, we have to ensure that transformation cannot be frustrated. We're ready to fight for this one. We're ready to fight because it's going to benefit the majority of our people, including those who are unemployed. But what we cannot allow is for people to protect the privileges of the past and wanting us to sit in the past and enjoy those privileges. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Wolmarans.
Thank you, House Chair. Honorable Minister, one of the critical aspects of government's mandate is around the development of an economy that will help our own economy to grow and to create job opportunities. Honorable Minister, how important is the call made by President Cyril Ramaphosa on the social compact to help grow our economy and create much needed job opportunities? And how various stakeholders engaged with the department in response to this call? Thank you.
The Honorable Minister.
You see, what we're doing, we are hard at work, yes. Consulting with the various stakeholders And there are a number of proposals which they are putting in ensuring that we are able to take this matter forward. And there are different proposals which we are consolidating. That's why we have said there is consultation with the stakeholders who are making their inputs. That's why we're giving them this 30 days so that we listen carefully to what they are proposing. That's what I can say for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Mkonto.
I'll be Honorable Mkonto, Chair today. Minister, in light of the marginalized groups that you have just mentioned, what specifics and clear measures will the department implement to ensure that the gains of affirmative action are not reversed and youth and women employment is prioritized? Thank you.
The Honorable Minister.
That's why we are saying, we are insisting on the companies that they put these targets we're talking about. And if there is resistance, first, our inspectors are looking into that. We're inspecting the companies. But if there's resistance, we say we're going to be very hard to them. By being hard, maybe let me start here. We are not going to start by being harsh. We will start with what we call corrective measures. Point to their weaknesses and say they must correct them. If still after that they do not do that, then we have to apply harsh measures. Remember that all along it has been voluntary. Now it's no more going to be voluntary. We are going to enforce it through the law. And if people violate the law, it means we have to be harsh. And if they are doing business with government, we will have to say you can't do business with government if you are not, you are violating the law. So it means then we just have to be harsh for the sake of transformation. We're not going to live many more years without transforming this economy and just having what we call political power. So we're very clear that we're putting all those strategies in order to enforce a transformation.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Jenna.
Thank you, House Chair. Honorable Minister, you just stated the effect of this act would be that companies who do not comply with your preset racial quotas would be barred from doing business with the state. Now, Section 217 of the Constitution under the heading procurement states that when an organ of state in any of the three spheres of government contracts for goods or services, it must do so in accordance with a system that is fair, equitable, transparent, competitive, and cost-effective. And even the State Capture Commission described it in its report as adherence to the imperative to maximize value for money for the state. Now, my question, Minister, is if only a certain number of companies can contract with the state due to the exclusion brought about by your quotas, thus not giving effect to the imperative, does that not then constitute a violation of the Constitution regarding procurement by the state? Thank you, House Chair.
The Honorable Minister.
Very interesting. You also say fair and equitable. And what do you mean? If we continue to give those who are advantaged, is that fair and equitable? It's as simple as that. The fact of the matter is that many of the white companies have had an advantage, and many of the emerging black companies have never had that advantage. And I know that you run to courts like we have done with the Treasury. We're looking into all those issues to ensure that the black people are also able to benefit in this. You're not going to protect that privilege abusing the Constitution. So we will be looking into all those issues. So it's to us, a positive discrimination has always been a deep debate centuries ago. So it's necessary that even the so-called, the most advanced economy has had this debate about positive discrimination or affirmative action. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. Question number 195 has been asked by the Honorable Nonsaila to the Minister of Employment and Labor. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Well, indeed, worrying to see that the employment is structural in nature. It is for this reason that the department has commissioned a number of studies to make recommendations on innovative strategies and approaches that can lead to policy approaches that can better address growing unemployment. In collaboration with the International Labour Organization, the ILO, the department has developed an employment policy to guide the various initiatives aimed at promoting employment. Well, the overall objective is to create sufficient and decent jobs in order to reduce the unemployment and enhance the productivity and competitiveness. The department's employment policy proposes a plan of action to promote an inclusive and sustainable approach to addressing the problem of unemployment. So the key areas of focus is to promote conducive environment for job creation, to promote entrepreneurship and access to finance for youth, for women and PWPs, and to promote industrial development, a role in job creation, to strengthen a well-functioning labor market information system, and to integrate employment issues in macroeconomic policies and investment strategies towards the employment mainstreaming and job creation. Also, we're looking to establish effective and efficient system to manage internal labor mobility and cross-border migration, and promote smooth transition from informal economy to formality, and promote labor intensity in public investment. So the department's employment policy is currently being discussed with the various government departments to ensure that there is a coordinated approach across government. Once consultations have been completed, the employment policy will be released for public comment and input. So in addition, as the last point, Chair, to the development of the policy, the department also provides essential social security protection through the UIF and compensation fund. So the department's productivity SA and the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration are also engaged in the various programs to help business with productivity improvements and turnaround solutions. So the CCMA aims to preserve the jobs and thus minimize the job losses. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Nonsaila.
Thank you, House Chair. And thanks to Honorable Minister for the insights you've shared with us. Honorable Minister, President entered or enacted the Employment Services Act in 2014. Can you just take us to understand, since the signing, how willing are the employers in making use of the services of the department in terms of recruitment and placement services offered by the department to the employers, and what are the limitations found in the application of this act, if there's any? Those that result in challenges faced by the Department of Employment and Labor in terms of ensuring that the country's employment opportunities are made in line with our national development agenda. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Well, as you say, Honourable Nonsaila, since the passage of the Employment Services Act number 4 of 2014, we've seen the application and usage of this Act's provisions in areas such as the registration of employment opportunities, the recruitment and employment from employment services of South Africa system, and the registration of the private employment agencies and temporary employment services. Well, employers have used these services of Productivity SA to promote the productivity in the workplace. But we continue to use the Act to provide continued employment of people with disabilities within government and the private non-governmental organization. Of course, usage by the employers is not yet at the level where we would want it to be. The area that is less developed has been that of the labor migration management under Section 8 and 9. We've commissioned research and undergone extensive consultation in this area. And we have a draft national labor migration policy and a whole new chapter in the form of an amendment bill to implement the policy. We will table the proposals in Parliament as soon as we have completed the NETLEC and the internal government processes. At this stage, we have completed at the level of the department, but we have to go through the NETLEC processes, including the areas of the amendment. Thank you.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable S. Ellen Gobo.
Chairperson, Honorable Ngobo has a connectivity experience. I'll take it. Honorable Minister, it has been reported that almost half of the working age women in South Africa are out of the labor force compared to 35.6% of their male counterpart. Concerning this, I would like to know what measures your department has put in place to collaborate with other relevant departments to upskill unemployment women in rural areas for the post-COVID working environment, which often requires a basic understanding of digital technologies. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Minister.
Order, Honourable Minister. Honourable Member, when we're talking about the strategies and our emphasis, we talked about designated groups. Women and African women are very central to that in our strategies. But I think that the big debate which you have raised is around the African women in the rural areas. I can tell you that there's a program which we are cooking to try and train our people, and in particular women. Minister Didiza will tell you about what we are doing, which we are proposing in relation to, for instance, agriculture, training those women massively. Minister Ndabeni Abrams will also be able to tell you in terms of the small businesses which we are talking about and targeting in the main the women in order to be able to do things for themselves. We're cooking that program. It's part of the integration and the coordination we've been talking about. And I guess even Minister Kubai, in relation to housing, we are also saying the target in whatever training we're doing, majority should be women. But we're not training for the sake of training. We're saying we're training so that people must be placed somewhere. If they have to start their own businesses, it means there must be proper support. That's the intention of a massive program we want to launch. Akunjalo, Minister. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The Honorable Jenna, that supplementary question.
Thank you, House Chair. Honorable Minister, you talk about employment and opportunity creation. The private sector is the largest employment creator in the country. However, government has been alienating and scapegoating the private sector for many years to divert attention from your own inability to stimulate the economy and employment creation, just as you have done in your answer to my previous question. The latest example is that of the Social Engineering Employment Equity Amendment Act that we've just spoken about, that affords you the power to interfere in private sector businesses by setting race-based quotas. How do you envisage, Minister, legislation and interference like this example that I've just mentioned, promoting government's relationship with the private sector and empowering the private sector, the greatest employment creator in the country, in job creation for, amongst others, women and youth? Because, Minister, I must tell you that you and your government seem to be moving in an opposite direction from that. I look forward to your vague non-answer, sir. Thank you, House Chair.
Honorable Minister.
The problem is that you make an assumption that this is imposed by government. All the measures we are coming up with, the Employment Equity Commission has representatives from all the stakeholders, including business. They are part to this. So this issue of thinking that it's being imposed is incorrect. And secondly, we cannot leave everything to the private sector. As government, we are there. We have to intervene in one way or another. Intervene for the sake of progress. And I guess basic economics talks about government intervening whenever there are market failures. So that's why our intervention is. We are intervening where we know that if we leave everything to the private sector, we are not going to be able to achieve the transformation which we want. So it can't be free, just the private companies do as they wish. We can't allow that. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The last supplementary question by the Honorable E. Hendricks. The Honorable Hendricks. We then move to question number 247, which has been asked by the Honorable Sheikh Imam to the Minister of Finance. The Honorable Minister.
Let me just say, Honorable House Chair, this is the most difficult question. It would be interesting to know what kind of supplementary questions are going to come and be relevant. Having said that, let me, in answering this question, provide a caveat. The numbers I'm going to give the honorable member have got two fundamental flaws. The first one is that the numbers I have are for the police department, not for police. Because it's difficult to distinguish between the employees, whether on PESAL or on SARS, which have verified these numbers from both PESAL and SARS to come to the number. But you won't tell me whether the person is a police or not a police, so in the department. So the numbers I'm going to give you are a package of the whole department. So in terms of the police in the last financial year, 2022, it was 9.901712. Okay, yeah, I forgot it. Let me simplify it for you. Let me simplify 9.9 below. Right? That it doesn't make sense. That's the police. In terms, no. Count here when some police. The next one, health, is 20 billion. But these numbers would exclude, for instance, in case of health, the private health people. So these are the numbers. But let me make 2 points. You know, when you quote a constitution, sometimes quite important to post the whole thing together. The quotation we've heard there of section 217 is subsection 1. The member deliberately does not go to subsection 2, which provides for preferential procurement. It's a deliberate attempt. The second thing is that the South African society is cast in a racial mood. It's cast in a racial mood, which itself is social engineering. While we are trying to address the attempt of previous social engineering, were accused by the same people who are products of social engineering. It can't be fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The first supplementary question from Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. Honorable Minister, yeah, my question was very clear. I was talking about police officers, nobody else in the department but police officers per se. But very importantly, quite a small amount, I noticed. You take 9.9 billion and of course remove others in the department and things, yes. But South Africa loses an estimated of billions of rands in this country because we don't get value for money. Number 2, foreign nationals, most of them in this country don't pay taxes. Number 3, those with foreign nationals in this country who have offshore interests evade taxes, and there's illicit financial flows. Now, police officers are performing one of the most dangerous and riskiest jobs you can ever find. We're earning 13 Rand danger allowance, now get 20 Rand danger allowance a day, 20 Rand to put their lives at risk, living in informal sectors. So my question is, will you have any objection, because I know it's not within your mandate, will you have any objections if we had suggested, and if it was approved in this House, that police officers in this country be exempt from paying taxes so that they could live decent, comfortable lives, be motivated, and protect you and me like they do? Thank you.
Thank you, Member. Honorable Minister.
I don't know whether I would not object to a tax for free for policemen of whatever category of employees for that matter. Because where does it end? You are also a politician. Because I'm looking at how you guys are looking at our houses, and you look at where your premier lives in the house of the governor. We don't own these houses. So let me just say, if you want the point you are raising is really not a tax issue. The point you are raising is an employment conditions of the policemen. That if you want to discuss what are the critical conditions of employment for policemen given the environment in which they work, let's have that discussion separate from the tax discussion. I think we're conflicted. That's why I was worried what kind of complementary questions are going to follow this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The Honorable Gomo, second supplementary question.
Thank you, House Chair. Minister, with regards increasing revenue to meet constitutional and government policy imperative, the Davis Tax Committee has over the years made specific tax proposals to the National Treasury. How have these revenue proposals shaped the current taxation model, and how have they benefited government and the citizens at large? Thank you, of the country.
The Honorable Minister.
I knew that the question is going to be broader than the police and health workers. The question has been brought into entire tax system, including the honorable member. The Giles Davis, what is called the DTC, when they abbreviate this thing, makes a number of recommendations for a variety of taxes. It's difficult to enumerate them over the time, but to answer the question, have they shaped the policy? Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, because those recommendations have impacted on certain tax categories, and Treasury has taken those recommendations into account, if I were to answer or remember in those terms. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Sarpne.
Thank you, House Chair. Minister, the average annual salary paid to a police officer is estimated to be 170,000 Rand a year. The average salary for a nurse is 302,000 Rand a year. However, there are 27,650 managers in national and provincial governments alone whose salaries are in excess of R1 million a year, and their average annual salary is 1.4 million a year. They get the same percentage inflation increase, above inflation increases, funded from the taxes of nurses and police officers. My question is this: what steps will the minister take to reduce the cost burden and contain the salary growth of millionaire managers in the public service, noting that they've enjoyed above inflation salary increases for the past decade?
The Honorable Minister.
I don't know why they're keeping quiet, because because it's not an extraordinary question. It's not an extraordinary question. But let me say, in his State of the Nation address, the Honorable the President said, "Jamthanda ngubani ungayithandi inkokeli yakho, nina niqhwaba izandla ingathi nguMuslim leni nje." Sure. La personality card ingathi nguMuslim nina. Sure. Wonke umuntu uyayithanda inkokeli yakhe, njengani nikhansela laa nto yenu pha. You know, I'm going to come to the question because it's fundamental. Let me just say what the President said in his State of the Nation address. The President in his State of the Nation address said the Presidency and National Treasury are going to all look at reorganizing government in order to ensure efficiency and savings. That's what the President said. That task exists between National Treasury and the Presidency. Part of that, it may not be focusing on that. You're focusing on these ones. Part of what we want to look at are all these small organizations which have and smaller entities which government have. Some of them are paying double the salary of the DG of National Treasury. It's a debate we're having of reorganizing government, and the President has set us a mandate to achieve that objective. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The last supplementary question by the Honorable Chelezi.
Chair, yeah, the question may have elements of confusion, but at the same time, it begins a necessary discussion about frontline services. And it's quite clear, Minister, that nurses and healthcare workers and police officers and other frontline workers really are not earning salaries which are commensurate with the work that they do, and it's inconsistent with the risks that are involved. So maybe the question then becomes, would National Treasury be amicable to the reconfiguration of the tax regime insofar as frontline workers are concerned, to adjust the salary scale, maybe to split the salaries to taxable and non-taxable in order to cushion the challenges that they face, also considering the fact that salary increases at times, which is most often than not below the inflation rate. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister.
Yeah, I think that's why I was saying it's going to be interesting what the supplementary questions are going to be on this question, because even that one talks to the conditions of employment of frontline workers. So part of the difficulty, let me just give you an indication. The OECD in 2019 did it, all right, as to where of the salary package in relation to the OECD economy. Where do we stack? We stack at number 3, close to the, in Scandinavian countries, all right? But when they turn the question around and ask per capita, how many workers do we have compared to those countries? Per capita, we've got less workers than, which means your fundamental problem, your problem is not the number, the headcount. Your problem, if you use the OECD study, your problem is the rate. Where is your problem if that lies? It lies in the point I was raising that these institutions you called agencies we have in government, all of them combined have got 160,000 people, all right? And that 160 people, which means we've got a fundamental problem with the frontline who has 2 levels. First is the pay, secondly is the quantum, the number of those workers. If you look at the budget over the past 2 years, one of the focus has been trying to improve the quantum of frontline workers, whether it's the police, health, teachers, and so on. But what you need to do is to restructure the other crowd in order to make sure that you can improve the conditions of employment of frontline workers. So it's basically not a tax issue, but a basic conditions of these employees, which everybody is serious about. But we've got to restructure government in such a manner that we can provide you with the right quantum of workers. Secondly, we're paid at a right rate. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Question 196 has been asked by the Honorable Tape to the Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, House Chair and honorable members. Thank you for the question, Honorable Tlape. With respect to what we've done, acknowledging the impact of load shedding on food security, in January, as a department, we convened a meeting of the industry stakeholders, which would include farmers, agribusinesses, and other important members of the sector who are critical in food production. We then had an assessment which was preliminary as to what was the impact. Thereafter, we agreed on setting up a ministerial task team, which would include members of the industry, together with the research agencies such as BFAP, to enable us to have a better assessment of exactly where were the challenges and where was the severe impact. That work was undertaken, and in February, the task team gave us their report. Simultaneously, we had an engagement with ESCOM to look at what it is that we can do to ameliorate the problem. Working with ESCOM, we agreed that where possible, we can have load curtailment. Load curtailment means that at a time at which you do not require massive energy sources, you can actually arrange with ESCOM in terms of your timelines where you exactly need more of your energy sources. And when we did that study, it was very clear that the irrigation areas in our country, that's where you require more energy at a concentrated time. So we then agreed that we would work with the provincial structures of ESCOM, as well as our farmers organization and agribusiness industries, so that when you apply load curtailment, there would have been consensus amongst those players. ESCOM did, however, indicate to us that where farmers or agribusinesses are actually embedded on municipal infrastructure, it may not be quite easy to isolate because of the density of other players that are linked in that energy source. However, some of the municipalities were able to find some way to address that challenge where it was possible. I must say that that work has actually assisted in provinces such as Eastern Cape, where there's concentration on irrigation, areas such as KZN, Malanga, and some parts of Northwest. In some of the areas, it has not been quite easy to actually do so. We've also continued, and I must say, Chairperson, that part of that ministerial task team included, of
Department of Minerals and Energy, as well as DPE. And when the Minister of Electricity was appointed, he also had a meeting with us and the industry players so that he can have a sense too, that was part of his orientation, to understand where most of the problems were in terms of the energy requirements by the agricultural industry. While we appreciate that load curtailment is working in a particular sense, we've also put aside 500 million, which we're going to put land bank, where we'll have a blended financing to assist industries as well as farmer, people who are requiring assistance, some of whom may be wanting to use alternative sources of energy as part of their production system. I must also say that certain industries such as the sugar industry has indicated that they can actually contribute as well into the co-generation of energy, which will not only assist them as the players, but will also assist neighboring communities, and discussions are ongoing with ESCOM in that regard. And that would actually be in areas such as KZN, as well as areas such as Mpumalanga, where sugar production is actually being undertaken. So this chairperson shows the
Thank you very much, Honorable.
what government is trying to do in dealing with energy security challenge in order to avoid food insecurity in the country. Thank you.
Thank you. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Tlape.
Thank you, Chairperson. And thanks, Minister, for the comprehensive response. We have seen the outcry from poultry and dairy farmers in the main. Having spoken about the curtailment of load shedding, Minister, there has been calls also for granting exemptions or reduced schedules. Just want to find out what action has the department taken in terms of granting exemptions or reduced schedules for the farmers to date, because your meetings was around February. Thank you.
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Tlape. With regards to exemption, I must say that our engagement with ESCOM, they did indicate that even in the health sector, where some of the exemptions have been done, it has not been entirely all the health facilities. So what they recommended, which has been implemented, is load curtailment, and it has worked, as I was indicating, that in areas such as KZN, areas such as Mpumalanga, Northwest, and Eastern Cape, load curtailment has been implemented. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The second supplementary question by the Honorable Masipa.
Thank you, House Chair. Minister, thank you. Food security is under severe threat in this country. Load shedding has contributed to many families going hungry. Many South Africans can no longer afford food, Minister. Food inflation has accelerated, and so food prices increases by 14% in the last 12 months to March 2023. This is the highest increase in food prices since 2009. At what point, Minister, would you protect the many South Africans suffering from food insecurity by extending your support to commercial farmers who are excluded from the blended finance? Please answer this question, Minister, honestly.
The Honorable Minister.
It is indeed a good question, and I'm very happy because Honorable Masipa sits in the Portfolio Committee on Agriculture, and he knows that in respect of the blended finance with regard to assisting farmers with load shedding impact, it's actually across the board. It's not isolating small or medium or commercial farmers. All farmers in our country are important players in terms of providing food security. Yes, Baba Masipa, because, well, I don't think we need to have a discussion and a debate. You fully know well that this program has not started. I said just now when I was answering to Honorable Tlape, 500 million has been set aside. If you will wait, we will make an announcement that says where you get the form, where you apply, how you qualify, so that you can actually be comforted. But you know that the issue of the cost of living, which includes the high prices on food, it's a combination of factors. It's not only the issue of electricity, the issues of fuel and increase, the issue of the conflict in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine has also contributed, where agrochemicals and fertilizers has been on the increase, but also the disruptions on the agricultural value chains globally. So it's not just a one, factor that results on the high food prices. Challenges of unemployment has also made a contribution of affordability for those who are unemployed. And Honorable Masipa seated there, he knows very well that he just had to ask that question, but no, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The third supplementary question is by the Honorable Montredi.
Chair, umuntu akekho umuntu namhlanje. I'm Mthwedi today. Yes. Sophie. Sanga. Minister, lo cimicimi siyavumelana sonke apha endlini. Hayi makancinci mani wena mani. Hayi. Lo cimicimi siyavumelana. Into okokubana amafama akhasayo, especially amafama amnyama, ayabetheka kakhulu. Kunto ezininzi and awanamali yokuzithengela ke into ezinjenge-generator otatigwede mantasha abanazo kweza fama zabo. Ithini i-department ayijonga umonakalo wabo? Yintoni eniyenzayo ngoku ukuzama ukuncedisana nawo la mafama, especially la mnyama, because ubumamela u-Honorable Nxesi uthetha kakuhle athi si-bias or urhulumente wenu u-bias towards black farmers or black people. So kule context of la mafama, loluphi uncedo oningasikhombisa lona nithi nenze oku for awaphi amafama amnyama? Nkosi.
The Honorable Minister.
Enkosi ke Montredi wanamhlanje. Uthi yintoni esizawuyenza ukuncedisana nabalimi abancinci abasafufusayo, ikakumbi abamnyama kulo cimicimi. Senditshilo ke ukuba sizawubancedisa bonke abalimi, ikakumbi abasafufusayo. Siyazi ke ukuba abanawo amandla amaningi oba bangakwazi ukuzenzela. Uba ke sijonga kuleyo ithetha ukuba umuntu uzawutsho uba mna yile eza kundinceda okanye yisola okanye igenerator izawuya ngomntu kaloku ngoba amandla awafani, awalingani futhi. Kula process yokuthi ke abantu bafake izicelo zokuncediseka ngale blended finance ezawuba ise-land bank, izawutsho ukuthi uba ufuna ukuncediswa nge-generator kumbi, uba i-generator ingu-50,000, uhulumende mhlawumbi yena uzakunika u-40,000, wena ke ungenelele ngala 10. Loo nto ke ithetha ukuba sizawufikelela kufutshane nawe kulo mcimbi oxakene nayo obangelwa ngulo cimicimi ukuthi ungakwazi ukukhiqiza kakuhle. Enkosi.
Thank you, Minister. The last supplementary question is from the Honorable Kulu.
Thank you. It's Ndabazit asking the question. Thank you, Honorable Chair. I'm asking on behalf of Nkosi Kulu. The Honorable Minister, you're quite right. You see, it's not only food production that gets affected when there's load shedding, but it's more agro-processing. And it is in that sector where many, many people are employed. And many farmers who employ these people lay them off work because they say there's no electricity, etc. So you've got the two ministers who are supposed to keep the lights on sitting next to you, and the one's gone out who provides the money. Now, has there been any talk of further incentivization if these farmers, ordinary people, have to use things like solar panel and alternate sources of supply to ensure that the agro-processing plants are kept active when there's load shedding? Because just like there are diesel rebates, you've been speaking about some rebates. Have you actually worked out how they could benefit more than anybody else, particularly those involved in the agricultural production sector?
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. Honorable Singh, we should maybe ask my colleagues next to me. However, I must say, as I indicated earlier, that in the work that we're doing, we're actually working with the Ministry of Minerals through their department, as well as the minister. I indicated that he has already met the sector, also DPE, under which ESCOM falls, and the Minister of Finance. If you look at that state of, well, let me say the budget presentation of the Minister of Finance in February, that indicated what not only citizens, but also industries can claw back in terms of addressing the electricity challenge, the issue of rebate, diesel rebate, the issues of solar. So all of those, we are working together to then say, the people who are working in this sector, particularly agro-industry, how best can they be supported? But let me say, actually, even before the engagement we had with the agricultural sector and agribusiness sector in January, last year, agribusinesses such as Premier Foods and others had already been assisted on load curtailment by ESCOM to make sure that they actually don't get disrupted in their enterprises. So work has been ongoing to make sure that the agricultural sector is actually cushioned so that there is no challenge of food insecurity in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Question number 230 has been asked by the Honorable Mbabama to the Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable. For the question, Honorable Mbabama. The answer is, since it relates to 2013, and the Mandela administration had indicated 1998 as the cutoff date. The question speaks about January 2013, but the question also says since. And therefore, between 1st of July 2014 and the 27th of July 2016, there were 163,308 163,383,000 claims were lodged between that period. As we now are all aware that the Constitutional Court then interdicted the commission from proceeding to process those claims with the proviso that we must first finalize those that were lodged between the 1998 cutoff date. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Gia. The first supplementary question from the Honorable G.M. Mbabama.
Chair, she's sick, so I will take the question, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Honorable Mbabama.
Thank you. This is Kruger. But Minister, load shedding is having a devastating impact on many lives. Many youths are unemployed. Many South Africans are going to bed hungry. In renewable energy projects, the South African government has set a target of generating more than 17,000 megawatts by 2030. The target is supported by the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producers Procurement Program, which has attracted foreign and local investment in renewable energy projects. Small enterprises would like to assist in easing the negative impact of load shedding. However, Minister, they are prevented from doing so because the earmarked space for renewable projects must have no existing land claim. Renewable energy companies cannot enter into arrangements with current rightful landowners and to contribute positively to the local economy. Minister, will you assure the members of this house that you will crack the whip to ensure that the Land Claim Commission conclude its work?
Yes.
Thank you.
The Honorable Minister.
Yeah, and the question, and as written, I'm not sure why the member went to Nineveh when sent to Tarshish.
No, you must just listen, Minister.
But anyway, we are currently not waiting for any cracking of whip. We are continuously doing that particular work to make sure that we finalize those claims that are outstanding. On a 6-month basis, we report to the Land Claims Court on the progress that we are making. Next to you, Honorable Masipa would be able to advise you about which provinces have been completed and what is outstanding. Very complicated process, but we have not completed it yet, but we are about to complete it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The second supplementary question by the Honorable Kapa.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Deputy Minister, what measures do you envisage in order to further capacitate the Land Claims Commission so that they can move even more speedily and efficiently in expediting their mission and further catch up with any backlog that they may have?
Thank you, Member. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Abulela Mthembu, with the question. There are not only one measure. One such measure that is in dire need is resources, financial resources. The second one is the capacitating of the Land Claims Commission to make sure that it has the necessary structures in place to make sure that it proceeds with its work in provinces, and that is being addressed, and the filling of such vacancies so that the work can proceed smoothly. The other one is trying to make sure that our communities speak in one voice in relation to claims. Because one of the serious problems is that communities sometimes don't speak with one voice in relation to claims, and even families. So there are quite various measures, but we are keen on the job and making sure that this particular aspect is being resolved speedily as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dear. The third supplementary question is from the Honorable Matthias.
Chair, I'm the Matthias today. Deputy Minister. Deputy Minister, your Lamusa report to the Land Claims Court indicate that you will need a further 68 billion to settle the remaining 7,000 land claims lodged in December 1998 deadlines. You have spent about 44 billion settling over 75,000 land claims. Why do you need 68 billion to settle such a small number of claims compared to the claims you have settled thus far? Considering budgetary constraint, by when do you foresee full settlement of all land claims lodged in 1998? I know it's a difficult question, but your minister is here.
Thank you.
We'll also.
Honorable GM.
Thank you, Honorable Matthias. In our work, we are guided by the Act. And the Act dictates what our role is. And one of those serious roles is to give back land to people who were removed forcefully by colonialists and apartheid in this country. And systematically we are doing that. Now that particular act also accommodates the fact that in some instances, you would find it not possible for you, Honorable Matthias, to go back to where you were removed, you know. And in that instance, the commission then considers that you say whether you want alternative land or monetary compensation to bring back your dignity. And that is also costly. Especially this issue that perhaps I should speak about, alternative land. Because we do secure and buy alternative land. And those that we buy from ask for huge, huge amounts. So there are a complex of issues that make that particular issue be so ballooned. But these are issues led by the minister that we are engaging with Treasury. And I think that this parliament should, at some day in the near future, will be able to discuss this particular issue that relates to the settling of claims and the amounts that are needed. Siyabonga, Honorable Matthias.
Thank you very much, Chair. The last supplementary question is from the Honorable Anne Cebekulu.
Ngicela ukuthatha umbuzo egameni lenkosi yesihlalo. Ngumntana enkosi njalo, uyamakhosi liwoza with caution. Speed kills. Mhlawumbe mhlawumbe akaqala ancome nje ukuthi ungqongqoshe ukhona anike nephini lakhe ithuba lokubuza. Into engajwayelekile le. You must learn to share, bongqongqoshe. You must learn to share. But Chair, on a serious note, Chair, on a serious note, the backlog is now overtaken by events. You have got claims where development has taken place, people have died, there's disputes with families, they are now land grants. And so is government, the question really is, genuinely committed to ensuring that it addresses the land question? Otherwise, we're kicking for touch. Because if the financial resources are what are lacking, then we should be given a plan by National Treasury, from when to when will the monies be available now. So the question, DM, is, are you genuinely committed? Because the backlogs, you are now overtaken by events, leaving our people in a condition of despair. Thank you.
The Honorable DM.
The answer is yes, we are genuinely committed. And I may elaborate that since the birth of our organization in 1912, one of the central features,
Order, honorable members.
Mhlambe you will gain.
Order, honorable members.
And since the assumption of President Mandela in a new dispensation, it is this government that had indicated that people must get back their land. It is also in recognition of centuries of colonialism that we are asked to sort out a mess not created by us. This is post-colonialism. This is why we are bringing back the land to people. There are, in fact, people last week in District 6
were asking me, what do people mean when they say we have not received back our land? We were removed in 1955 from here. We are now owning houses given by this government. Only last week. So there is a genuine, but it does not mean that we must negate the challenges that we do face. That's why in answering Honorable Kapa, I had indicated that one of the critical challenges that we are facing is resources. And so, sir, we are, and you must remember that we are not doing this for ourselves. We want to create a lasting legacy for generations to come so that they are not faced with the problem which was created by other people. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Question 236 has been asked by the Honorable Madokwe to the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy. The Honorable Minister.
Honorable Madokwe, I'm reminding you something you know. That in 2007, the BS took the Department of Mineral Resources to court. That was 2007. And the judgment of that court was that slime dams are not mining activity. They belong to water. And therefore the relevant department today is Department of Department of Water and Sanitation. So the reality of the matter is that you are asking us to do something that is not in our jurisdiction. We're used to that. Of anything that smells mud is thrown at us. It is water and sanitation that is responsible for the issues there. Yes, the houses that were washed away were built by a mining company. DBS consolidated then. Now, Fontaine, it is not a mining company in terms of the judgment of 2007.
Thank you. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Madokwe.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Minister, notwithstanding that there was the court judgment you are referring to, which you should have appealed, by the way, but chose not to, and you are now using to avoid accountability. There are recommendations that were made last year by the Portfolio Committee that are directed precisely to your department on Fontaine that one would have expected you to respond to. Moreover, recent reports attribute the Fontaine disaster to poor engineering. During the period when tailing dams were still under DMRE, why did your department fail to confirm the mine safety and allowed mining activities to continue in the area despite concerns even from the community members?
The Honorable Minister.
Mine safety falls within the jurisdiction of Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. Water safety is not in DMRE. No, I'm not jigging. I'm not jigging. I'm not jigging. In 2007, there was a court order.
Honorable members, please allow the minister.
In 2007, there was a court order that took that jurisdiction away from us. Now, where there is justice system, you don't walk into Fontaine because you think that it should be mining and grab it. You will have to follow a long process of getting that reversed. Today, the slimes dam in Fontaine, and I can tell you, in the whole of the Free State and all the gold mines, they are falling within the Department of Water and Sanitation. So if there is a weakness of engineering, is a weakness of engineering in the relevant department. So you don't draw around engineering skills and try to address all the issues. It doesn't work that way.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Zipo. Order, honorable members.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Minister. Noting the judgment of 2007 that declared that mineral regulation does not apply in mining dams, is there any consideration within the department to revisit that judgment, or alternatively creating a legislation that will ensure that what is described as processing is not necessarily processing but mining, and therefore allow that it be regulated under mineral resources and energy? Thank you very much.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister.
If you are engaging the Justice Department in the Free State, it would be irresponsible of me to come to Parliament and announce that. We should do it and get the results. Once we have results, we'll come to Parliament and account.
Thank you, Minister. The third supplementary question from the Honorable PLENARY.
Minister, the international best practice with regard to the management of tailings dumps is contained in the Global Industry Standard in Tailings Management, the GIST. Has the department taken steps to introduce compliance with the standard in South Africa? And if not, why not?
Thank you. The Honorable Minister.
Tailings dams are constructed during mining. When they are constructed under mining, a mining legislation does apply. But once you leave that mine and it becomes a derelict mine or an ownerless mine and is sold to somebody else as slime dams, the judgment put it under the jurisdiction of water and sanitation. And we're not going to go and grab that space from water and sanitation. We will engage department, come with, actually we didn't run away from Takasfontein, many of you know that. We went there, we put our team, it helps water and sanitation. That doesn't make it a mining issue, it's a water and sanitation issue, but we do provide our support service to them. And that's what we're going to continue doing until there is a different outcome in the process.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The last supplementary question. The Honorable Shengwa.
Thank you, House Chair. Honorable Minister, what plans does your department have in place to collaborate with the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fishing to ensure that this strategy is not repeated? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Minister.
If it was a mining activity, there would be a plan. It falls under water and sanitation. Water and sanitation. Yeah. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Hold on. So.
Order, members.
You don't go around developing plans for all the departments. You only develop plans from your department. Slime dams are given by courts to water and sanitation. So we can't go around and develop plans for slime dams. Actually, if you ask us in the department, we always emphasize the fact that this thing should still be with us because we have the skills, we have the knowledge, but it is taken away from us by a court order. It is in water and sanitation. So we can't develop plans for water and sanitation. It doesn't work that way in government.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Question number 197 has been asked by the Honorable Skosana to the Minister of Finance. The Honorable Minister of Finance.
Honorable House Chair, the government has taken a few steps to provide relief and help households experiencing high food prices. Food inflation has been trending high in recent months and has been driven largely by high prices of bread and cereal, meat, particularly beef and poultry. In August 2022, the trading industry suspended the anti-dumping duties on poultry imports from 5 countries for a period of 12 months to help reduce the price of poultry or chicken prices. Furthermore, the 2023 budget stated that the government had taken the decision to extend the diesel fuel levy refund period to manufacturers of foodstuff for a period of 2 years, effective from the 1st of April to the 13th of March, 2025. This was coupled with the announcement that the general fuel levy would not be increased in 2023-24 financial year. In addition, a network cost of living rapid response task team, which National Treasury is part of, has been established to build an understanding of the issues driving the cost of living and attempt to secure immediate or short-term changes from the government to address high food prices and food insecurity of poor and vulnerable households. Intervention in preventing collusion in the food process market is essential in ensuring that consumers are not subjected to unjustified and opportunistic price increases. This, however, falls within the mandate of the Competition Committee, and we recommend that the honored member refer this to the Minister of the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Skosana, first supplementary question.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will take it on behalf of Honorable Skosana. Minister, notwithstanding the measures put in place, food inflation is one of the main drivers of overall inflation. And it remains government policy to protect the poor. Is the cost of living rapid response task team considering further exemptions to VAT on broader range of foodstuffs than currently it is? Thank you very much.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister.
This question has come up on several occasions in the House. And I understand the motivation for it. There has been a commission which was undertaken or appointed, we put that way, by National Treasury in order to evaluate the whole of the impact of that and which product should be zero rated. And that committee made a number of proposals. At the moment, there's no discussion, or may I put it this way. I'm not considering any zero rating of any item at the moment. what we should be looking at and the discussion we need to be in that session. What are the other measures we need to take in order to cushion the impact on the vulnerable? I made the point earlier on today that in terms of the indigent policy, we've provided about 40 billion rand, 70 billion rand to support the vulnerable. And taking into account, we've also increased in this financial year by 1.1 billion rand, the electricity alone, not the entire basket. So these are measures. In addition to that, we're increasing the social grants, as we've said in the budget. In addition to that, various programs of government are intending to deal with the poor. Among other things, the public employment program. Among other things, the extended public works program. Among other things, the social relief. So all of these are measures which are intended to deal with the question of poverty and unemployment. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The Honorable Alexander.
House Chair, I'll be taking the question on behalf of Honorable Alexander. Minister, Stats SA's figures released 2 weeks ago show that domestic food price inflation has reached 14% year on year, while globally over the same period, food prices have fallen 21%. So this is no longer a problem of imported inflation, but is being driven by fundamental weaknesses in the domestic economy, specifically load shedding, which causes huge losses in production, and high transport costs due to high fuel costs, as well as other domestic microeconomic factors driving up these costs. What steps is Treasury taking specifically to reduce input costs that is driving this inflation? Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
First point, wrong assumption. What's the wrong assumption is the one that suggests that it's no longer driven by a global concern. It's inaccurate. Because you will understand, since the impact of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, it has had an impact. It does not have no impact. I mean, the impact has been largely the fuel prices have largely been affected by that. The food stuff, precisely because of the fuel of fertilizer, have been impacted by that. Those are global issues. It does not deny that there has been compounded by domestic challenges such as load shedding. No doubt about it. Another complicating factor which also must be taken into account is for domestic business has been the exchange rate. All of these things combined, you don't have a panacea from Treasury to deal with these complex economic questions in order to say, if you deal with A or B, you'll deal with this thing with ease. Because it's a multifaceted and complex confluence of factors which impact on this plan. So I cannot suggest that, as you propose, that this is measured. I've outlined the first thing, that what Treasury has been working with other departments, what are the other support measures we can provide to the vulnerable? And I've outlined that in answering the previous question, or the previous supplementary question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Shivambu.
Thank you, Chair. May I take this question?
Yep.
Thank you. Minister, in March 2023, the Competition Commission reported that they are monitoring the prices of essential foods because opportunistic major foods retailers are abusing our people. And they've drastically increased the price of basic food such as maize, cooking, and oil grade. This is the food that is mostly accessible to many of the poor and working households. While our people go to sleep on an empty stomach, some companies are reporting increases in profits because these hikes are essential in food. Have you, as minister, sat down with the commissioner of the Competition Commission to understand what is driving these increases and if greed is part of it? Or do you agree with Stellenbosch researchers who said food prices increases are justified? Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Wrong door. We are knocking at the wrong door. Wrong door. There's a department called Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. And competition, whose responsibility?
Honorable member.
Whose
Listen to your
responsibility
response, please.
is to monitor opportunistic and uncompetitive behavior. My original, responding to the original question of Khosan, Honorable Scott, in responding,
Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members.
Oh,
Order,
okay,
honorable
withdraw,
members.
honorable member. I withdraw, honorable member. And without reservations, withdraw. Withdraw.
Honorable members.
In my original, in the answer to the original question. In the answer to the original question, I said, Order Chair.
Honorable members, would you please allow the minister to respond? Honorable member, what is your point of order? Would you please take a seat, honorable minister?
Yes.
Honorable minister.
The honorable member is saying, Minister Ngazopambana, which is you.
Honorable members, stop interacting with each other. Honorable members. Honorable Matokwe. Honorable members. Honorable Keza. Siabo.
Let me, honorable House Chair, say to that honorable member, I apologize, honorable member, unreservedly, okay? Then let me come to the question, Yodi. In my conclusion, I said, in the original question, intervention in preventing collusion in the food processing market is essential in ensuring that consumers are not subjected to unjustified and opportunistic price increases. This, however, falls within the mandate of the Competition Commission, and we recommend that the honorable member refers this matter to the Minister of the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. That's why I say wrong door. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. The last supplementary question from the Honorable Buthelezi Hlengwa.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson. Honorable Minister Madiba, sekuyimina manje, sesiqedile. Minister, a study by WITS released this year in February indicates that 20.4 South Africans are food insecure. The latest food basket index indicates that a basket food has gone up by 516 rands. If you look at the basic foods, Spar is charging 433 rands, Pick and Pay 428, Checkers 421, and so it goes down. So in light of this, Minister, and in response to the response you gave, why are you not at this critical moment considering zero rating the foods which are of basic necessity to our people? Because you said you're not. Shouldn't you be considering it, given that South Africa is, for all intents and purposes, a welfare state, and all the other issues contained therein? Food relief for our people insofar as prices are concerned.
Thank
So it
you,
becomes
Honorable
important
Member.
to understand your rationale as to why you're not considering it. Thank you, Chair.
The Honorable Minister.
Let me just say, when you table a budget, you ask yourself a couple of questions. How much can the economy afford? Because let me tell you, I'm not somebody who says, no, you've got high debt or not, or so on. Because the capacity to service debt depends on the capacity of how the economy is performing. Now, is our economy performing in such a manner that I can fund everything on earth? The answer is no. You know, I used to be, in my days as a union organizer, there was a guy. I used to have an interlocutor who was a manager on the other side. When I'm on strike, Roy Lawrence would say, you know, Mr. Kotongwan, you must distinguish between the company's willingness to pay and the company's ability to do so. What we're talking about is not an unwillingness to address the issues of poverty, it's the ability of the resources we have to be able to deliver on everything. Now, I'm saying this, I mean, somebody was saying, why don't you cut the fuel levy? I don't like it. I've said it. But I tell you the following. If I were to withdraw it today, I'm taking 90 billion out of the system. How am I going to deal with that question? Right?
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
It's an affordability issue. Thank you.
Question 198 by the Honorable Gupega to the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies. The Honorable Minister.
Well, Chair, I was looking at the time and I had already packed. Thank you, Honorable Chair. To Honorable Gupega. Indeed, we want to accept the fact that if you violate continuously an international treaty, it leaves your country without protection against what we call spectrum interference. As we speak now, we speak of KwaZulu, Mozambique and Swatini signal spillage, meaning a signal finding itself in an area which was not predetermined for its operation. Again, the other challenge is that if we don't move on this matter, is that upkeep for analog needs goes down because firms that produce those products and that maintain move away because there's a change globally, and that is no longer making business for them. Again, it delays what we call the production of broadcasting content, including educational, sporting, and entertainment on analog platforms. The delay in the release of IMT spectrum has a significant impact on the speed and quality of services that could be offered, especially to the people who are in the disadvantaged area. And that concomitantly moves together with the reduction of cost. Again, it postpones the social obligations. Remember, the mobile operators in securing the spectrum would have actually made undertaking to actually to implement certain obligations which are of social interest. And if we do not work on this speedily, it affects those. And then lastly, the minister would have, on the 9th of December, pronounced the 31st of March as the analog switch-off date, which would have affected a number of stakeholders. And once the Gazette was out, it had an impact on a number of people, and it led to a lot of discussions which are ongoing. And we hope to finish those. And once we are done, in a very short space of time, we'll be able to actually make the announcement to remedy the situation of the delay. Thanks, to Honorable Shan.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The Honorable Vega, first supplementary question.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Firstly, can I just ask Honorable House Chair, there in the paper, I'm not Mr. NJ, I'm Miss NJ. Can they correct that?
The will in the near future. Go ahead, Honorable Member.
Thank you. To my Honorable Minister, thank you for the response. And now, Honorable Minister, has the minister determined the work which still has to occur to ensure migration from analog to digital broadcasting, and has a new date for the analog switch off, as you are trying to explain, the off being set? If yes, it's when, Minister? Because you are saying in a time, you are not giving us a specific date. When can we expect more or less it to occur? Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister.
I would have said to the honorable members, based on the Gazette, based on the pronouncement on the 9th of December, leading to Gazette, a lot of engagement got involved. I just want to ask for the honorable members' indulgence. There's a lot of litigations that's around this matter. So how you handle it, you have to be careful. And we understand the urgency. As I'm talking to you now, 5 provinces are done, outstanding 4 provinces, less than 100,000 households to be what to call to be installed. Once that is done, we very soon will be able to talk about the date. It's going to be very quick and it's imminent, but it's not a date that I can pronounce now, honorable member. But I appreciate the urgency.
Thank you. The Honorable Matsone.
House Chairperson, may I please take the question? Thank you. Honorable Minister, even your predecessor made the impression that it was urgent, but we are still here. The PDM has been a very expensive pet project of your department, which fails to capitalize on the existing infrastructure of the private sector to minimize costs. Oversight done by the committee in the Free State has revealed that even the poorest of South Africans still prefer pay channels because of the content variety. What is the estimated time, Honorable Minister, that it will end, and the estimated budget for the post-installation? What is the budget and what is the end date that you are planning for the post-installation processes? Thank you, Minister. It cannot be a perpetual project.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Minister.
I don't think, I hear the honorable member went to Free State and they engaged. There is people preferring pay channels. If you can repeat your question, if you don't mind.
May I?
for the ears of a former mine worker.
Go ahead, Honorable Minister.
No,
Or you are, I was one of the minister.
I could not pick the question.
Oh, okay.
Honorable Chair,
Ngaphinda, man.
standing to get the question proper.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Honorable Minister, you have a project that you have implemented as a department. At some point, it has to come to the BDM, Honorable Minister Silla. How about so? So therefore, Honorable Minister, the question is, at which point are you going to end the process? But then, when are you going to end the process of the after service? Because it is our understanding that there will be an after service on the installation of the set-top boxes. When will that end? But what is the cost to your department to complete that project? Because it cannot happen perpetually.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Thank you. Well, if I understand you, when you speak about after service, you speak about maintenance and a lot of all those other issues. It's difficult to say exactly when is that going to end. We are also putting together a formula to deal with that, but I cannot be able to say when is it going to end. Otherwise, if I told you, I'll be misleading you. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. On the Honorable Tambo.
Thank you. I will take over for Honorable Tambo. Minister, the continuous delays to the analog switch off, which most recently was expected to occur on the 31st of March 2023, ought to have provided an opportunity to the department to distribute set-top boxes to millions of South Africans who will be cut off from access to information on free-to-air television should the switch off occur without comprehensive distribution of set-top boxes to enable access to digital terrestrial television. Acknowledging that access to information is a constitutional right, Minister, how many set-top boxes have been distributed to South Africans, and how many are yet to be received? Thanks.
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you. Where I'm sitting, I'm not going to give the exact figure of what has been distributed. What is yet to be distributed is 80,000. To calculate exactly what has been distributed, we can give you that number. I don't have it exactly out of my mind now. That was a straightforward question.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The Honorable Majosi. Shangwa. The Honorable Shangwa.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chairperson, one of the biggest impediments to oversight and accountability is the inability of government to be committed to its own commitments. And that is ensuring that projects, programs, service delivery agendas have got a start date and an end date. Now, the digital migration program has been going on for the longest of time and has been open-ended. The fact that up to now, seated here, the minister cannot give an end date makes it difficult, therefore, for Parliament to hold him accountable. So the question stands, Honorable Chairperson, at the very least for the minister to give us a ballpark date so that we can be able to gauge whether he's making the necessary strides to complete what is supposed to have been done donkey years ago. So when, Minister? When?
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Minister.
When, Minister?
Oh. No, that's not what they're asking. You are asking for the date. And I said it's not available. We are working on it as quick as possible. Yes, you want a date. You want me to say, you want me to lie to you. So we have said.
Order, honorable members.
We have said to you, I have said to you, the minister on the 9th of December would have pronounced the 31st. And that has got an implication of engaging with all the prospective legal litigants, people who are affected by this. We are wrapping up all those as we are speaking now. I can't say when we are wrapping up and say next week is the date. It doesn't make sense, but I say I appreciate the urgency.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. The time allocated for the questions has expired. Outstanding replies received will be printed in Hansard. Order, honorable members. I request members to stand and wait for the chair and the maids to leave the chamber. That concludes the business for the day and the House is adjourned.